Thank you everyone who's here and everyone who's following online. So, in this session, we want to talk a bit about the role of the galleries in the digital market. And let's start by considering that over the last 2 decades, the contemporary art market has undergone a process of digitization, that started with galleries needing an online presence, which was basically having a website, then using tablets, emails to communicate with collectors, to show the work that was not physically present, then entering online marketplaces, and finally also lately using blockchain solutions, among others. Against the backdrop of an ongoing trend of financialization of the art market, the market has accelerated, with being increasingly dominated by digital distribution and data analysis, with different companies offering quantified analysis of what is going on in the market, the sales, the trends with the artist. But all this process of digitization does not necessarily mean a global incorporation of digital art into the contemporary art market. The contemporary art market, we can say, over this last 2 decades, has looked at digital art basically in three moments. One was at the beginning of the 2000s, during the dot-com boom, and there was this growing attention to art on the internet and then digital art. The second moment happened around the beginning of the 2010s, which was right after the global financial crisis, which led the market to look for new ways of distribution, to look for new market niche. And then the final moment, which is more or less the one that we are living now, comes with the rise of cryptocurrencies and, of course, the NFT boom. Right now, we live in this moment where, as I said, the market is accelerated. There are many more actors than there used to be a few decades ago. And in this ambience, we ask, particularly in the case of digital art, what is the role of those galleries who have been supporting digital art for years? And we are lucky to have here two prominent galleries from the European and international art market. So Valérie Hasson-Benillouche, welcome, founder and director of Galerie Charlot in Paris, and Wolf Lieser, welcome, founder and director of DAM Projects in Berlin. So I'm going to address each of you, and since we are both, I have you both here, I think it's going to be a great opportunity to kind of compare your experiences, to go from one to the other. And for that, first, I want to do a brief introduction of each of the galleries and each of your histories. So Wolf, you're a pioneer of the digital art market. You already got in contact with digital art in the late 80s. You were already curating shows of digital art in the 1990s, and had one of the first, working in one of the first galleries, maybe the first devoted fully to digital art. That was a Colville Place Gallery with Keith Watson in the late 1990s. And since then, you have, as you can see all here in this brief bio, develop a whole work that has balanced the attention to the history of digital art and looking to reach to a wider audience, to have them interest in digital art. I have to say also, in the gallery, in your gallery, we find a combination of artists, the represented artists, that has a very important focus in these pioneers that you have defended for a long time. and then artists from different generations until also the present time with younger and more emerging artists. Then let me also introduce a bit Valérie with Galerie Charlot. You came in a different moment, 2010, when you started the gallery. Then you opened this second gallery in Tel Aviv. And I should say your work has also been very much involved in the education of audiences and discussions around digital art. And also, this is something we will discuss, your development of specific projects with luxury brands like Hermès, Audemars Piguet, etc. And also, in your case, I think it's interesting to talk about your work with artists from working with contemporary art, maybe more traditional formats, between brackets, with digital artists, also different generations, and I would say also a special attention to the artists from France, and also artists from Israel, and also some of the pioneers, right? So with that brief introduction, let me start with the questions, and I will go more chronologically with you, Wolf. We talked about this moment where you started to become interested in digital art in the early 1990s, and you met pioneers like Manfred Mohr. You were at SIGGRAPH. And can you tell us a bit about how was this moment? How do you see the possibility of developing a market for digital art at that moment? How was the situation at that time?
Yeah, thank you for having me here. Actually, it was in the end of the 80s when I had my first encounters, and I was really naive. I was enthusiastic, I was excited. I thought this is a fantastic new aspect in the arts, and I couldn't understand why it was not really established on the market. If you compare it, for example, to video, which happened as well in the 60s, it was established on the market rather quickly, but digital art wasn't. And that was, for a very long time, a mystery for me. And I had started a gallery in a town near Frankfurt, a bit of a smaller town there, and of course, to sell this kind of work, it was nearly impossible. Really, people couldn't understand it. They thought it was made by the computer. Even one of the biggest German magazines on art, it's called Art. It's really the biggest since ages, titled "The Computer is Making the Art," which, as we know, is not true. Maybe with AI. We talk about that later. So, yeah, the market was very difficult at the beginning, and that kept on going as well with Coral Place in London. We didn't make any money, and then I moved to Berlin. So it actually just basically started to happen. I mean, I survived, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be here, but it basically only started to happen after 2010, I would say.
And that is exactly the moment when, Valérie, you open your gallery.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
can you tell us
exactly.
about, you opened a gallery in the middle of Paris. How do you see that opportunity? How do you see the market at that moment? And how did it all come out?
So 2010, as you said, Pao, it was the end of the, financial crisis. So it was maybe not the right moment to open. But as Wolf, I was super, I think, super positive of this new kind of artwork. And it was for me something that could bring something new in the contemporary art. So it's true that when we said it's digital, this kind of word, for me it's contemporary art. But and maybe this word is something that could answer to the question why this kind of art is not well known at that moment, because it was stigmatized in digital and computing things. So when I opened the gallery, everyone was saying that it was crazy, at the time. But then I mixed because no one knows what was digital art. So I mixed with classical support as paintings, and for maybe 2 years. So I was really trying to make the link, because I think there's a link, of course, between, and we know that there's a link between the classical support and like paintings, drawings, and everything, and digital art. I mean, artists using new technology to create. So first of all, I did that for 2 years, and then digital just take the path more.
Great. And so coming back to Wolf, this is an image from the Colville Place Gallery. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about that particular moment, which is kind of the second moment. There is already the digital revolution, but still the market is not there in place, and we are now in London. How was that experience also, and how did it evolve?
It was a very small gallery in the middle of town, really nicely located, not very far away from Tottenham Court Road, Oxford Street, and so on. And of course, for me, it felt like a really exciting adventure to get involved with Keith Watson, who was very idealistic. He made his money with web design, so we both made our money outside of the gallery. And as Steve already mentioned yesterday, I mean, after 2000, there was a magazine in the US at that time, end of the 90s, called Art Bite, which was published for a few years. And I met the publisher in New York, and we spoke and so on. So it seemed like now it's going to happen. And we know what happened 2001, right? Steve mentioned it as well. So there was a little bit of backlash, you would say. We basically showed mostly English artists there, and some of the few contacts I had, Manfred Moore. I think we sold something from Manfred to the Oxford University at that time. I wonder where it still exists and so on, if they know what price increase he went through. But anyway, so yeah, it was a very nice community. It was just a meeting between all the insiders. And so it was a nice experience, but market-wise, I thought London is such a rich town. There must be a few who really are willing to spend money on this kind of adventure. It didn't happen at the time.
And in terms of the ambience, like you said, Steve described how when he finally opened the gallery in 2001, there were all these exhibitions, and there was this enthusiasm also connected to all the dot-com boom. But this was in the US, and you had been already in London with that, and that enthusiasm did not reach so much in Europe, would you say?
No, I mean, there was the ZKM. I don't know if you know that. It's a large museum in Germany, very large museum dedicated to media art. That was already functioning and working, but Karlsruhe, where it is located, is a bit off the track. So it's not that where they have a lot of people, but of course, Peter Weibel, who just passed away recently, did a fantastic job of building an international reputation with fantastic exhibitions and great exhibitions. But that was about it. I mean, when you look at England, there's the Victoria and Albert Museum. And the Victoria and Albert Museum is a very broad range museum. They have nearly everything, from fashion to jewelry and art and everything, sculpture. And but what happened to them, but that was later, after that, they got a donation of two collections. One from the Computer Art Society, and the other one, what was the name? It was a collector. Anyway, so they got these collections, and from then on, but that was after we had basically closed, they started to get involved with digital arts, and they have built now one of the biggest collections, especially in the early computer arts. So no, it was not like that. Of course, we heard about these shows at which Steve mentioned yesterday in 2001 and so on, but that didn't affect the scene very much.
And Valérie, still comparing also the US market with the European market, and particularly how you said before, how you were merging this more traditional format, so to say, with digital art. I was wondering over these years, how was the reception, and even today, if you think that people who approach a digital art gallery expect like lots of lights and interactive things, or they kind of understand this kind of mixture of formats.
Well, it's true that we're still in kind of education. So people thought that when you have like when you talk about digital art, most of the time people think it's videos and screens everywhere, or interaction. So they move in front of everything. But I think we've done a great job since, for you more than for me, few years. But you know, people get involved in the fact that using the artist using new technology could touch either photos or sculptures and everything. So they get more aware about what's happening around this kind of art. So now I have to say that since many years now, I'm doing only digital, but in a different way. So you can find photos, drawings, sculptures, and everything. So people just get, you know, just get familiar with this kind of vision of the digital art now. So the scene is just larger, but it took a while, I have to say. That's true.
And also, particularly in the beginning, when you had these different artists, what were the artists' reactions, those that were working more with painting and those that were working more with digital, towards each other and towards what the program of the gallery was?
Well, this kind of mixing paintings, like it was really for the 2 first years, so it was really short. And when I really radically changed, and I said, "Well, you have to understand that I really want to present digital art." I mean, the classical one understood, and they said, "Well, it's a shame, but they have more possibility to be represented anyway." So because you had so many galleries actually which are presenting very good artists like on classical support than for digital. So that was really my choice. And you know, it's you have a lot of galleries, so but digital was one of my really focus and passion. So
And what about the collectors? What was their reaction, the people who came
well,
to the
it
gallery?
was very funny because first of all, the collectors were coming the 2 first year for most of the time for the classical support, so like paintings and everything, and discover what was digital art. So it was interesting and very educational way of talking about arts and everything. And when I changed, I told them that I will change a little bit more digital and everything. And they finally follow. And they were very, very interested in, because they had this historical part of the link between the both ambience of the art world. So I think the link was very important to be made.
Okay, Wolf, let's go back to 2003 when you opened Dam Gallery in Berlin, in Mitte. How was also entering this part, the city that was reinventing itself, the art scene, and getting into this environment?
Yeah, so after London, and I still kept this other gallery in Wiesbaden near Frankfurt, where I made my money, I really decided to, oh, well, I should say maybe that I launched this online museum, this digital art museum, where the name is coming from, in 2000, while I had the gallery in London. And so we were building a kind of resource so people could inform themselves about the whole history of digital art since the 60s. Because I realized that curators and museum people and so on, they had not a clue about this history. Everybody I spoke to, they didn't understand and they didn't know these people which were important at the time. So based on that, I felt now I really need to make a decision which way I want to go. And I decided to really fully concentrate on this aspect in art. And then I looked around which city to go to. I mean, of course, in Germany, Berlin was bubbling. There was a lot of space. There was a lot of new developments. And Berlin was famous to be a city where new art would happen, contemporary, new aspects would happen. So I saw the biggest chances to really go to Berlin and open there. And that's what I did in 2003, and opened the commercial part, which was then called DAM Gallery, later named DAM Projects.
Great. And Valérie, this other aspect that I mentioned at the beginning, which is the collaboration with luxury brands. We see here, for instance, a collaboration with well-known artists Laurent Mignonneau and Christa Somera, who did this interactive installation for Hermès. Can you tell us a bit about how these collaborations came about, and do you see in these brands an interest in digital art and actually potential to become collectors or to bring in art collectors?
Well, yeah, I like to work with luxury brands because it's between commercial and artistic. So I think the artists are not all aware about sacrifice somehow a part of the artistic part of their work, because it's not easy to work with luxury brands. So sometimes for an artist you have to, to be on a side for some things that you don't really do normally. But the thing is, when your boundaries are pushed away, you need to be more creative. And to work with luxury brand like Hermès, there's different very positive points. First of all, they have money to produce. So this is something very interesting for the artist. Everything would be produced very well and a very quality aspect. Second, they really like art because they need to bring some new experiences to their customers. So they are really always searching for different kind of experiences, immersive or not, just it could be something very small. This was very small, actually. It was really on a pedestal, but the projection on all the boutique was really amazed. But, so it was qualitative, creative, and very visible. So this is the third point, which is very nice. It's with luxury brand, when they do something, they really communicate about it. So all the 3 points are very constructive for art in general. But it's not easy to work with them because they are very, very difficult to work with.
Right?
But yeah, it's true.
So continuing also with the subject of reaching out other audiences, Wolf, you mentioned before the DAM Museum, which has been kind of a core element in all the work that you do. We also have another pioneering project, which is this digital art program at Sony Center in Berlin. So a public space screen that started. That was 2005, I believe. Yeah, so
18 years now.
Exactly. Yeah. So very early and very long-standing, which is quite unusual. And there was also the book, The World of Digital Art, which you published, which you wrote and was published by H.F. Ullmann in Germany. So all of this tells us about your continued interest in communicating to a wider audience. And I was wondering, on the one hand, how has that been received over these years, and how do you see it nowadays that we still need this kind of education of the audience?
Well, the Sony Center project is really very unusual. It started in 2005. Sony Center is a very prominent building in the middle of Berlin, which was, of course, owned by Sony at the time and created by their former CEO because he loved the Philharmonic, which is just across the street. So he built this big Sony Center in the middle, which was basically the border between East and West. So we started to collaborate since in 2005, and we are showing there basically 5-6 times a day for 10 minutes, 3 different artists. And this Sony Center was sold in between 6 times. So it has very different owners, this real estate, big international company, and they all continued this kind of aspect, this kind of program, which is very unusual for a public screen. This is purely a PR activity, of course, and make people recognize it, and we promote it, and people are going there and to look at the art. And what was the other part of the question?
Yeah. So the reception in general, also the book, the
book,
website,
okay.
a bit, all of it.
Yeah, the book was published in 2010, which gave an overview of the whole development, which was really helpful for the whole activities. And how much it is needed now? Well, yeah, I remember that, of course, NFTs, the famous word, you know. NFTs and how it changed the art scene to some degree, at least in the digital field. I mean, big galleries which are representing painters and sculptors were not that much affected by it, even so Damien Hirst got involved. But leaving that aside, the whole NFT scene has opened up a totally new field, especially with young collectors. And we have really profited from that. They have found out about it and they started to collect, and they are mostly in their 30s. And of course, they don't know much about it. So the really advantage with the online museum is that they can really inform themselves and get an idea where the whole thing is coming from. And so, of course, it's still needed very much and helpful.
Yeah. And Valerie, you also had participated in lots of conferences. You have also participated in events like here we see the on virtual art fair that took place in Paris in 22. So what is your take on this same question about this need to educate, and how do you do it, and how do you reach out?
Well, as Wolf said, the NFT, the word. Well, since we work in digital art, we needed to get involved in this NFT system. So it took a while for me actually to understand how it was working. And it's true that during the pandemic, that was a very nice solution for the artists most of the time. I have to say that the gallery were closed almost, I mean, waiting for some new moment and better ones. But so after that, I mean, we study all the NFT system, and some of the artists were working already in NFT. And even if they were like in a classical digital artist, it's very nice to say that finally digital artists began to be classical. They were just really trying to get involved in this NFT system. So they asked me if I could, maybe do something with the NFT after this pandemic things. And we decided with two other persons to make like an event around this NFT system. And which was really interesting is finally this NFT just bright up the digital art scene. So it's like everyone, of course, most of the people were saying, "Oh, you are in digital art, so you're doing NFT." And I was like, "No, I'm presenting digital art, and we have some NFTs in it." But so it was always, trying to explain people that, first of all, it was digital art. I mean, and then the NFT came up, because NFT is just the way that you buy. It's not an art part. It's just a tool,
Yeah.
So we did this exhibition, and it was very, very interesting to see how the people would question and finally get back to the gallery and ask for the difference between the NFT and the digital art, and begin to understand how it was working. And I have to say that was the first point after the pandemic that brought people back to the gallery.
And I like very much when, like we see in this image, the ambience. Like this was in an atelier. It was an art school, right? I think.
Yeah, it was. It was
in the middle of Paris in Saint-Louis.
It was in L'Île Saint-Louis.
In Île Saint-Louis. And this ambience where you see it's not like the typical white cube setup, but more something that feels like this is something I could have at home.
Yeah.
Like something more closer, more easier to.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe that's also something that came up with NFTs, like people realizing they could actually buy art. That is not so difficult. No, it's not so, because there's this perception of the gallery as this very exclusive white space, and people are afraid to enter.
Yeah.
And did you find also a difference
Yeah,
between
I
the people
think-
who came here and the people who come to your gallery? recently? Sorry.
Well, not really, but I'm always fighting somehow, trying to explain that digital art is not something that is always immaterial. And I remember a client, very classical one. He was like having a castle with beautiful paintings from families and things. So very classical habits about how art is in his area. But and he said, Valerie, he was coming to the gallery and trying to understand what was digital art and everything. And he was saying, Valerie, how can you live with, this kind of art on my screen? I would sit there and look at my screen and I look at it and I say, do you do that with paintings? Do you sit in front of your painting and look at your painting? Well, that happens sometimes with a glass of wine or something, but, and you have to live with your screens and it's moving or not, but it's not really different. So to see that NFT or, the system of buying NFT, it's just another part of the digital part of art. It's just that you have a different certificate, you buy with different money, but in fact, it's not only immaterial, it could be physical. And actually, I sell some artworks in NFT who are physical. So it's very interesting to see different kind of, you see here, this is the NFT artworks from different artists, and using, of course, very old Lippi frames from the 16th century. So, and the other one is a Brazilian artist working with the dance of shaman. So, you can live with your screen and it's moving. It's like a painting. It's like photos. It's like everything. So it took a while that people understand that was another kind of artworks, like any kind of it.
Particularly when the NFT boom came out, there was this idea that, okay, artists could bypass everything else and then sell directly, bypass the galleries. In your case, you decided to expand the reach of your galleries by creating even a marketplace. And I remember you also did like workshops for your collectors to explain to them how to create a digital wallet and all that. How was, in terms of the artists that work with you, how do they see this working with you in this particular space versus maybe going on their own on a marketplace?
Well, it's true that it's the artists who asked me, could you open a marketplace? And I was like, well, I'm not sure. It's not an easy thing, And of course, most of the artists were working without galleries at that time with the OpenSea and whatever, any kind of marketplace. So I said, well, why not? But, financially, you need to have your percentage. I need mine and, everyone. So we had to find a solution. And the thing that was very interesting in creating a marketplace is that those artists were not lost in this huge supermarket, hypermarket places where you can find most of the time 98% of bullshit, I have to say. So I think that was helping them and helping also digital art to see that you can have really artworks sold in NFT. So it was really something very interesting for me to follow and to select different kind of artists. So the marketplace of the gallery is really something that we select different kind of artists, and we consider them as a digital artist, not especially NFT. And some of them are doing the both. So you see the frontier. There's no frontier. Finally, everything is mixed. It's just different tools.
And Wolf, your approach, as I remember, we talked about it some months ago, was to not get into creating a marketplace, just supporting the artists, but letting the artists do their own sales. Why did you go into that direction?
Well, that is a bit of a complex question, but I want to keep it short. So basically, the main decision was I can only do that much. So as you already have seen, I have the online museum, I have the gallery work, and then I'm relaunching a Lifetime Award this year again, which I gave away from 2005 to 2012. So there are many different activities, and I very much followed the whole development of NFTs, and at the beginning tried to understand the different mechanics and so on and so on. I think I understand it, most of it now. And I decided to basically leave it to the artist, as it is a perfect thing to directly reach your customers. And you know, if you know the NFT scene, it's a community. It's very much a community, and it's very much something which many feel has created a kind of own universe outside of the established art market, which seemed to work for a long time for a wider range of artists. Where I see it now, it's mostly working for the artists who have already a career and who have already developed a kind of own position and so on, who were serious about art even before. Even so, we still find some NFT artists, as they are called, which is a funny name anyway, which appeared only in this universe. So I did decide that I have on the website an NFT section, but I'm just referring to NFTs or recommending NFTs which are offered by the artists we represent on their own platforms. We will get involved because I think it's a different way of selling this kind of art, and it has some real advantages. But we took our time. I'm just in the process now of redesigning all these aspects which are necessary to do it. So I was not so much in a rush for that. And all the other aspects kept me busy enough.
Also, you mentioned the DAM Digital Art Award, which was my next question. And continuing also with how artists make a living, I think it's quite telling that you created this award first to bring into public view the work of these pioneers that have mostly been forgotten, and then providing them with a money award and an exhibition and a catalog. So maybe you can tell us a bit more about that and about filling these gaps in the history and about this and about how we forgot all these pioneers that are left aside.
I mean, especially in the NFT world and so on, there was a lot of attention on the contemporary artists, on younger artists, and who became as well very successful. And there is still a lack of recognition, I think, of some of the early pioneers. I mean, these people started in the 60s. They basically, for 30, 40 years, maybe even 50, they never made any serious money. So that was the idea when we started the award in 2005, which then was interrupted in 2012 due to several reasons. So the award continues in these aspects, and we are trying to acknowledge the early pioneers right now. It will move forward, of course, because these people are all in their 80s or 90s. Some of them have already left us, but I think it's very much how should I say, necessary is not the right word, but I think you understand it's very much important to recognize these people before they are leaving us or going away. So this year we will have the next 5 which are nominated now, and then the different jury will select the winner. And he's getting, or she is getting, 20,000 euros just like that, and a show in Berlin and a catalog, as you mentioned.
So next question is actually for both of you, which is about having a space like Wolf. You have been in different spaces in Berlin, in Cologne and Frankfurt, and Valérie, you have your space in Paris and another one in Tel Aviv. I was wondering, nowadays that there's so much digital distribution, you participate in international art fairs, how important is the physical space in the city?
Here we go now. Yeah. We spoke about it last night on our walk back.
Yeah. Now I can go now, so I leave you to it.
No. Valérie.
No, it was very interesting because we had this question, and we don't have the same experience maybe it depends about the city where you live. I don't know. But I have
People
to
don't like
say,
to come to Berlin. They enjoy Paris much more.
I don't think so. I mean, Berlin is it's a nice city also. But my experience is gallery space is very important, because most of the people, they need to have the experiences of the artworks. But in a certain way, and I understand totally your point of view, is when you have like very well-known artists that everyone knows already, have seen them in the museum, institutions. So it depends also the artist that you're defending, or showing. But when you have very well-known artists, so maybe it's not so necessary to see the artworks in a space, because you have seen them everywhere in different kind of museums and everything. But if you show younger one, emerging artists, so then you need to show them in a very nice ambience with an experience and everything. So it depends also the artist. And the second point that we were talking about also is, I remember I had this experience. I worked with some foundations, and one of them, but most of the time was online, by email. So I could even didn't know what face was behind the email. But once they came to the gallery for an artist, and I felt that my gallery, my space, was too small for what they thought. So it was very interesting, because finally they already bought few art, and when they came to the gallery, they were maybe disappointed, So it was very funny to see how finally the space of the gallery is very important, to have the image of a gallery and the artist of it. So I think, I would really stay on the fact that to have a nice space is very important. But that's my experience.
Okay.
I have a very different perception.
Yes, sir.
And that's what we realized
Yeah.
as well last night. And there are some other aspects which I'm just thought of when you explained this. First of all, 95% of what I sell is to collectors, and mostly it's North America, Europe, and Asia. Collectors who have been to my gallery, and I'm 20 years now in Berlin this year, once, maybe twice. That's it. Some of them never been to the gallery, and I work with them since several years. That's one aspect. Maybe it has to do about the whole strategy, which is different between us, and how we find our customers and so on. The other aspect, which I observed recently in the recent years, some years ago, when you had to apply for an art fair as a gallery, you had to prove that you at least open 25 hours a week. Right? You know that? You had to prove that you have a location and you keep it open for the public. This has changed, even on major art fairs. Now they're accepting galleries, and there's one very active gallery in Berlin of two women who are doing a fantastic job and so on, and they are open 3 hours on Saturday. That's it. Which is ridiculous because, of course, if you're coming in from wherever and you look at by appointment, then that is a step to make an appointment for many people because they just want to have a look. So it feels a bit like they're in a bit of a difficult situation. So don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of having a location, doing things there, offering it to the general public. 98% of all the people who are coming to my gallery in Berlin are not buying. 99 probably, right? But I still enjoy it. I mean, everybody who has experienced me, typical gallerist, keep talking about the stuff, explaining it, really introducing it. So I really enjoy that. And I like it when they leave and they have, say, this I like, and I really understand. And like on software art, many people didn't understand at the beginning that it was continuously changing, never repeating. Some were frightened when they realized that. Looking at the screen, it will never, the same composition will not come back. That is a strange concept, which I find the most exciting concept. But anyway, so, and I'm doing events there. I'm just preparing an event which is in 2 days on AI and so on in the gallery. So I'm totally on the aspect of a location. And I think the cities would lose a lot if this continues to be like that. And my research proved that as well from very established galleries in Berlin, who were totally established or are totally established. They open 4 hours on the Saturday and the rest by appointment. They have a location. So it's a maybe, okay. So, but there are more aspects to it. So, but the business side is a different story, at least for me. Yeah, the business side is working very well without really, and not to forget, it is very important, and of course, that is very exciting as well, to be in personal contact. Some of these collectors who never came to the gallery, I have visited. I have seen, I have met, we have talked in person and so on. So that is, of course, I mean, a major part of this game, and it is, of course, as well very exciting.
So we are almost done, but I have one last very quick question before we get to ask the audience very quickly. If you had to give some advice to a contemporary art gallery who want to delve into digital art, what would it be?
Be patient.
Be patient.
Patient.
My advice, well, there are big galleries who have snapped a successful artist or some successful artists in this field of digital art. Rafael Lozano-Ama, who was mentioned last night, I think he's represented by Pace now or something like that. So the usual game in the art world, if someone becomes really successful, there's a lot of money involved, then they often are picked up by bigger galleries. That is an aspect which is happening with digital artists as well. Getting involved in the digital art field as a gallery, I have seen many galleries in this 20 years who have appeared and who have run a gallery for a short period and then disappeared again. I think the market comparably, and from all the statistics I know, 60 to 70% is painting.
Even more.
Probably more.
Yeah.
So my suggestion would be, if you really want to make some money, sell paintings. If you really want to be involved in the contemporary civilization, 21st century, what is really changing our culture, what is really definitely affecting us in our daily life drastically in the next 50 and even further years, get involved in digital arts. That's the really exciting thing.
It's an engagement, you know.
Absolutely.
You get married too.
Fantastic. So now it's a good time to open the floor to our audience if anyone has a question for our guests. Yes, we have one here. Just wait for the mic, please.
Thank you. It was a great talk. I would say I would ask the same advice for emerging artists to come in contact with your galleries. What advice you would say you would give, since normally we take the path of just social media is kind of like the norm right now, but there's not avenues, even in London or in Europe, that I find that are very clear for emerging artists to connect with galleries.
You want
Yeah.
Shall I?
Yeah, it's the same. Well,
This is a question. Basically, of course, a gallery is looking, and if it's active, is looking as well, like me, who has represent a lot of pioneers and middle-range pioneers like Casey Reese or something like that. We only have a very few young artists which we can include. You only can do that much. So most of the galleries, I can tell you, are not accepting applications. And you can always try. I look at websites. When I see something, someone's writing to me, I look at the website just out of curiosity, which is totally fine. But to land in an established gallery, you need to develop already your career to some degree. You need to appear in some group shows or do something which is different and establish some kind of own style. The best chances are with young galleries. So if the young galleries are starting, they are much more open for including as well young artists which are at the beginning of career. That totally makes sense because they are not getting the established guys. So that's all I can say. What do you think?
Well, there's a difference again between two of us. But I like it.
Don't worry.
I like it. Well, I'm always looking for young artists because I love risk. So I took risk when I opened the gallery. So Paris is digital. But so what I do is, it's true what you said, that when you have a new, not well-known artist, you take risk and it costs a lot for gallery, for the artist, but for the gallery also. So that's why we established like group show, where I mixed younger artists and established. So it's very interesting to see the difference between the reaction of the collectors or people or visitors, between all this kind of, range of artists, that the well-known up to the super new one. So this is something that can really help the young artist, and I think it's really something that I'm defending. So you're welcome to show me what you do.
We just had 2 shows with young artists, which are totally new at the gallery.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
Lauren Moffat and Greta
Yeah.
Lowe.
Exactly. So you do some very young artists, not really well known.
Yeah, they are beginning career artists.
Yeah, beginning. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. But yeah, always open. We are here to show different kind of artworks. So
There's someone asking there. Where's the mic?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I have another question. Did you, both of us, have any collectors before opening the galleries?
Oh, well, for me, none. For me, no, it's not really true. I mean, I knew some people around, but it was not like friends, or I'm not from a family of collectors. I'm a family of technology and science, so it's very different. And no, I think I like to meet people, so it was easy for me to meet different kind of people, and then you meet one and the second, and it's very, yeah. So I meet collectors, and I have to say that maybe we didn't talk about that because the time was very short, but art fairs, we didn't talk about art fairs, but art fairs is, even if it's very expensive, still the place to meet collectors, and especially for me that I was not from a family of collecting people. So yeah, art fairs is really important, even if it's very expensive.
And I started, I opened my first gallery in '93. I started with nothing, really. I was just excited about art and so on. And at that time, of course, digital, as I said, was not playing a major role yet. So I had to build it up. And when I moved to Berlin, where I basically made the change from a mixed program to a purely digital program, there was one collector from the Frankfurt area who made this change with me. And he was actually a major part of my income in the next 10 years. Lucky enough, I'm always thankful for this. So most collectors I basically created. They became collectors because they got excited about the idea.
Yeah, I had the question about art fairs and how art fairs are responding for when you applicate for the application, and maybe also about museums and public collections. How has been the change for the last 10 years, responding and getting interested in buying more digital art?
Wolf?
I haven't done many art fairs in recent years, but I'm starting to do them again. as well, because the artists expect that to some degree. And I'm like this year, I'm going to be on the Art Cologne, which is the most important fair in Germany. And the museums, that is always one of my favorite stories, because I have sold to the Pompidou, the Victor and Albert Museum, MoMA, Whitney, other museums worldwide. Nothing in Berlin.
You should
Not
maybe
that-
change the
not-
city.
What? You should change the city. You should move to Paris. Okay. Well, I'm not
But
sure.
you have to open a space.
Competitor in town. That's not a good idea. But no, joking. But so if you understand the art world a bit more, every curator, even museums directors, have their own agenda. When there's a change in the director, they might go for a different field, which I find important. Of course, they're trying to address contemporary movements to some degree. There was just a change in the major museums of contemporary art in Berlin, like the National Gallery or Hamburger Bahnhof and so on and so on. But none of them has any kind of background in the digital arts. The other aspect which I learned as well is, as I mentioned before, museums seem to start to collect stuff when they receive a donation. So if anybody of you wants to make a major donation of digital art to a museum, I have an idea. No, anyway, it's too young. So they are not, I mean, there are some very good collections now around on digital art, but, and that's how it happened with the Victor and Albert Museum. The Pompidou might be a difference because they have gotten involved already some years ago, not very much, but on a smaller scale, but they do regular shows, which seems to be unusual because they are really addressing this field on nearly a yearly show on digital art or connected to digital art, which is unusual. MoMA, I've been involved with MoMA, I have loaned work to them and so on. They don't even have a curator for digital art. Sorry? They never, well, that's another
They
story.
never reply.
But that's not unusual. I mean, so there are many different, if you would like to approach it logically, I don't think it works. There are too many personal aspects coming into it.
Well, I think it takes time for the institutions to get involved in digital art. And most of the time, I mean, I'm working with Pompidou. As you said, this is one of the museums who's get really involved in digital art because they have a curator and they have a conservator like specialized in digital art. But most of them, they don't. So it's true that, you know, it's kind of a question of, again, be patient, you know, just work all the time to make it through and getting people involved in this new kind of art. But most of the time they collect historical part at that time, not the really super new emergent. It's more art centers like the BNF, for example, who just bought the first augmented reality artworks. So that was like, wow, something. And I could say that foundations are more involved in the artistic digital artwork.
More questions?
Hello, thank you, and congratulations on the vision you both had opening your galleries. My question is about your encounter with new young collectors, if that has changed in any way something of your management in the galleries, or if you're thinking about changing anything around that.
I didn't get that.
No, I
So
Sorry.
when you encounter young collectors, if they're demonstrating or asking for different things that might have made you change the way you manage something in the gallery or the way you approach collectors in general?
I don't look at age. I mean, they are treated in the same way than the
Yeah.
older ones. I'm not sure if I really understand what you're talking about, because of course, young collectors, I've experienced collectors now have 200 NFTs and suddenly want to get something of the early guys and so on. They have a different background and so on, but
Communicate more on Instagram, or you do kind of something in that sense?
Oh, the communication style is of course different. I mean,
Oh, okay. Yeah, but well, the young collectors are very different because most of the time they they need more time to buy, which is very interesting. You know, they come and they come back with a family and with a wife or with the children. You know, they take times because they're not so secure about what they're buying. I don't know why, but yeah, maybe they take more time. But they're very fidel. I don't know, very
Loyal.
oil. So,
Yep.
you know, it's really it's very interesting. And most of the time, they like to buy old pieces, not super emergent artists.
Thank you.
Do we have time for one more? Yeah, still, because I lost control.
I lost control.
Yeah.
Wow.
No,
I love that.
that's that's a song by
Yeah.
what's the group? I forgot.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, yeah, just
And
my
when
mind.
you said I had the song, but
Yeah, it'll come. Anyway, Joy Division. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it would be on my mind for the whole day. Okay. Any last questions before we finish this session? Oh, you're all satisfied with all the information that's been shared. So
thank you so
thank
much.
you, Valérie. Thank you all.
very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks.